Awesome. So, hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in from all over the place. And we are glad to invite Bryan Sullivan today, who is a principal PM manager at Microsoft. And I got an opportunity to attend his session on how to build the right solutions as a product manager. And I really believe that this event will be very helpful for everyone who is trying to break into PM or who is just a new grad PM. And just to give you a heads up about Bryan's introduction, Bryan has more than 20 years of experience in this area, and he has also co-authored a book on Ajax security. His expertise is revolving around dev scope and how to make developers more productive, and also in the security space, that is how to make more secure cloud solutions and more secure software engineering overall. So with this, I would love to welcome Bryan. And yeah, Bryan, you can go ahead and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Anish. Thank you everybody for joining. Yeah, like it's exactly right from the start. This is really how to know as a PM, how to know that I'm building the right solution. I'm really delivering the best value for my customers. There's a lot of misconceptions, I think, about what PM really means, and I find that a lot of, especially new PMs, tend to have focus on not necessarily the wrong things, but maybe out of proportion with the right things. Like we spend too much attention on a tiny bit of the job. So this is kind of an attempt to zoom back, take a higher level view of the role of developing products end to end, and not so much a narrow focus on one small part of it. So let me continue. As a PM, your job really extends way beyond just the creation of features. And this is kind of the one that I was teasing out just a second ago. Like, so many PMs really want to focus on, like, how do I design, and I'm speaking specifically about software engineering PMs, but it goes in multiple disciplines. But everybody wants to zoom in on the part where we design new features for teams. And it totally makes sense. I get it. Like, I want to deliver things that delight my customers too. That is one of the very best and most interesting parts of my job. But it's certainly not the only part of the job. Like, your job can't just be about, like, I will go spec out a feature, I will design some user interface to make sure that everything, like, works well and is very usable. Again, all this stuff absolutely necessary. But as a PM, you really have to understand not just the time of the feature, but the time before that. Why are we even building a feature to begin with? And this is actually a really critical part. Like, as a PM, we really need to own that why. If anybody in the organization is going to understand why we build a thing, it has to be us. We're going to go into this in a lot more detail in a few slides. And not just before the creation of the feature, but after the creation of the feature too. Like, our job is not done when the feature ships, far from it. So this talk is going to talk about, like, all those directions before and after. There's really two cycles to this, and I want to present this not as the way to do product management or program management. This is a good way. Again, I don't want to say, like, my way is the right way and that's it. It's not. But all I can say is, I've been using this framework for a long time, and it's very successful. A lot of people have had a ton of success with it, and I think you will too. That being said, there's lots of other material out there, lots of other frameworks, and these can all be just as good. I wanted to share one that I personally find very relatable, very straightforward, and again, very successful. So you see two cycles up on the board, and the two cycles are really this. In the first cycle, we need to identify the best problem to solve. Not the only problem to solve, because in many cases, there's many problems to solve, but it's on us to weed out the ones that are not the top concern right now. Like, what's the best thing we can go take care of? And then notice that this is a cycle. And notice, and once this cycle is complete, we move on to the second cycle, which is, all right, we've got a problem to solve. Now we want to deliver a solution that solves the problem. And the part, I know I keep coming back to this, the part where we talk about designing new features is like this square at the top of this one cycle. It's like 10% of the job, maybe. It's an important 10%, but in the whole thing. So with no further ado, I'm going to get on with all the rest of the little arrows in these multiple cycles. By the way, if there's any questions at any time, I don't like monologuing for an hour on end. So if there's other questions, please raise your hand, and Anisha's going to moderate. And I see that there's a raised already. Go for it.
Feel free to raise your hands. Yeah. I think Gordon, you can ask your question by unmuting yourself.
Yeah, it's probably way too early coming out of the gates, but I'm going to do it anyway because I guess I'm an aspiring PM. Yeah. And you can just say, let's wait till the end of the talk for this if it's too big, but like, how often do you come into situations where you don't even have the data yet to identify the best problem to solve, and yet there's this massive pressure to like deliver the solution, and you're just sort of stuck in this area where you're like, we need a foundation first. We really need to sit in the problem, and there's that tension. I don't know. This is what this chart.
No, it's a great question. I'm gonna hope that the next few slides get to that. There's not an explicit part of this, and it's like, all right, here is where you need to sit back and just wait and stew and stuff. Like that's not part of it, but there should be enough framework here that you can start to ask the right question of the right people to get a better sense of where you're going of identifying that problem to solve. It is a fantastic question, and that's what I'm going to try to answer. So let me know if I'm doing a good job of it, or if you still have questions. And there'll be more time for Q&A at the end.
Yeah,
but again,
we'll be
if you've got questions, like raise your hand and we'll either do them or we'll wait, but don't let yourself sit there and be confused. And there's also audience participation. So get ready to participate anyway.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, so first cycle, important cycle. We want to identify the best problem to solve. And to start with this is we really need some kind of overarching goal to aim for. What do you think about this goal? And for month here, you can use sprint or quarter or whatever time framing purpose you like. But this month, our goal is to go build feature whatever foo. What do you think about this? What do you think about this goal? Is this a good goal or is this a terrible goal? Not to jinx it too much. I'm seeing thumbs down. Yeah, this is a pretty bad goal. What's wrong with it? Idea, go get put your ideas in the chat. I'll let Anish like read out some of your but there's no shortage of things wrong with it. So please don't be shy.
Yeah, so there are people there is Shreya who's saying why should we build the feature foo? So starting with the question why. Yeah. Gordon is saying, yeah, that's a bad feature. No time for metrics in specific, Jay Shelley. And then it depends. It also depends on a lot of different factors. A SMART goal is needed. Who needs this feature? Doesn't specify who are building this feature for. Awesome.
Also a good
Thanks,
one.
guys.
Also a good one. No, you guys are, you may not even needed me to give this talk. Yeah, everything you're saying is right. There's a lot of bad things about it. It's not a SMART goal, so it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. Actually, it is time bound, but yes, it's not a SMART goal. It doesn't talk to who is doing the work. Most importantly, it doesn't talk to why. And we're definitely getting into that in the next few slides. Another thing that we didn't come up, or at least I didn't see in the chat that Anish ran out. It didn't talk about the impact at all. Like, it's one thing just to go build something, but building something doesn't mean anything. Building something, unless you're deploying it, and unless people are using it and people are using it for the purpose intended, like, you've just made a very, very expensive, no impact activity. I mean, when you have a dev crew at an organization, I mean, I can speak for Microsoft, and other companies that I've worked for over the years are all similar. Like you might have a 10, 12 person crew, and if you send them off, you as the product manager, you as the person who is directing the activity of this development crew, if you go send them off to build something and it doesn't actually have any impact for customers, like this is not a good sign. Like it's not like, I don't want to make it sound like it's career limiting, like you'll be like, it's not that, but you've taken a precious resource and you haven't got value out of it. You haven't shown impact to the company and to your organization. There's two great books that I'm going to recommend to everybody that help frame this. And the first one is Measure What Matters. Really famous book these days. It talks about objective key results, OKR. So Google use these, Microsoft use these, Gates Foundation, as you see, and these are about setting measurable goals of what you really care about, not what it is, not the activities you're going to do that bring you there, but what the end goals you actually have in mind are. And that is what we are going to measure, and that is how we are going to gauge success and really drive our activities. The best way for me to explain this is to show an example rather than trying to summarize the entire book for you. So that's coming up in a slide or two. But please check out this book. This is a great one. Here is another great one. Start with Why, Simon Sinek. This book, and there's also a really good YouTube summary of this one. In this book, Simon talks about every organization can tell you what they do, but that's not really compelling. Some organizations go a step further than that, and they talk about how they do it. And that's okay too, but really the compelling thing, the thing that drives customers to you, the thing that drives, interest and loyalty is really why. Like what your customers are really buying is your message of why. I really want to convey this message that this is absolutely critical as PMs. We have to own that why. Like your development managers, they own the how. Actually, I'm gonna take a little side trip here. I was not always a PM. Oh, Anise, is there a question or?
Yeah, I was just about to say about the chat. Everyone is talking about impact and love Simon Sinek. I think Lynn is already familiar with this author. And thanks for sharing the link to the book. And I just wanted to reiterate your point, Brian. I think outcomes is more than output. Is
Absolutely.
What we are. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is so critical, and we're definitely getting into the heart of that. But that is it in a nutshell. So personal story. I was a software dev and a dev manager for many years before I got into program and product management. And I loved it. And I love being a PM too. And they're different. And as I first transitioned over into PM, I was struggling with it a little bit, not because I didn't like it, I loved it, but because I really missed development too. I missed being able to go create something with my hands. Like I built code that runs. And I had a really great mentor who was in Windows at the time. And he said to me, look, there's two kinds of people in engineering. There's people, and it comes down to what question really drives you. And he said, if the question that drives you is how to build something, like what algorithms to use, what technologies to use, if your driving question is how, you're a dev. If your driving question is why should we even build this thing at all? What problem does it really solve? You're a PM. It was brilliant advice, and I really took it to heart. And I thought about it. And by the way, they're both super important problems. There's not one that's better than the other. And I say this as a PM. Like, we really need people who really care about both these things. But I thought about it and I decided that while I was myself interested in both questions, the one I was most interested with was why. So I stuck with PM as discipline, and it's been a great journey for me. So again, if you want to, both careers are wonderful career paths. Think about what really drives you and read this book. It's a great book. All right, so let's take this back. Now that we have a little bit more framing. We know we want to have an objective metric of what it is we really care about and what it is we really want to measure. And we know we want to start with why. Like this goal right here is a what goal. This is what we're going to do this month, and it says nothing about why we would want to do it, what we really care about. Let's think about something better. How about this one? I think this is a much better goal. This goal, our month, is to improve our customer trial conversion rates by 20%. Presumably, this is some kind of like, I just kind of made it up, but maybe this is a service that we are. It's a startup service, and we're offering trial subscriptions to customers for some point of time, and we want to see how many of them sign up to be paying customers. And right now our rates aren't high enough. We want to make more money. So we want to improve our trial conversion rates by 20%. This seems like a better goal. How about this one? So I've spent my career in the security space. Maybe it's not about making money. Maybe it's not about getting more eyeballs on your product. Maybe our goal this month is to reduce security remediation times. Like every time we find these XSS cross-site scripting vulns, we want to reduce. We want them to get fixed 10% faster, so that there's less potential impact to customers, so that they're protected better. This can be a kind of tricky thing to measure, but this is one of the key ways that we measure it at Microsoft. One thing you're not going to see here is any notion of the features that we're going to take to do it. Like we want to improve our subscription rates, our trial conversion rates. Great. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to talk about how to do it, but it's not in our goal. We want to reduce our security vulnerability remediation time by 10%. Great. How? We will talk about it, but it's not in the goal. If you were to put it in the goal, actually, so I'll go back to. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Sorry, folks. When we look at goals like this, about our goal is to improve our customer trial conversion rates, it does more adequately reflect the real, like what in that measure what matters in the OKR, what it is we're really trying to achieve, that real why. But it's scary as a PM, and I see this even in people that I have worked with in the past, and I sometimes still see it, like in junior and occasionally even more senior PMs. These kind of goals are scary because they're out of our control. It's easy to say, I will ship feature foo. Like I can do that. Like all of the things aside, like there may be technical problems, but it's relatively within my team and my capability to go build a feature and ship it. But these outcome-based, and that's what Anish was saying about output versus outcome. That output is in my control, but I don't have control over the outcome. And this is where we have to learn to let go of that. We have to learn to let go of trying to control everything. Because at the end of the day, what we care about is the impact we have and how much good we do customers. And if we only say, I'm not gonna try to do anything for the customer that's not in my direct control, we lose a lot of impact. In my previous job, before I was in developer services at Microsoft, I was in another team in Azure that, not an internal defense team, but rather a team that built security features and sold them to Azure customers. And my boss at that time was the director of program management for the entire division. And his quarterly goals were like increase monthly average users by 10 million people. He can't do that himself. He can't even do that with the team of 100 people he has. Like we can't all go out on the streets and like sign people up. Do you want to sign up to the service? Do you want to sign up to the service? Like there's no way we were going to do that. But so again, out of his direct control, but it wasn't out of his influence. The way that he went about getting those extra 10 million people was to figure out what customer problems were and address it. And then that would in turn drive more people to do it. By solving customer problems and delighting customers, we get that goal and we have that influence. But again, or that impact rather. But again, you have to be willing to let go of that direct control in order to have more influence and have impact and success. It's a tough thing, I know, but when you do it, you'll be successful for it. All right, I'm gonna skip over this. The way that the framing mechanism I like to use in my own mind for this, of like what makes a really good, worthwhile goal is, I imagine that I am riding up the elevator, like so in Redmond at least, for Microsoft, we're all working from home from COVID. But I imagine we're all back in the office and I'm riding up in the elevator and Satya gets in, or Bill G gets in. Or actually, the executive vice president of the division literally works in the next room over from me. So here's a guy, like reports directly to Satya. There's like 30,000 people in his division, like he's like my skip levels, something. So we'll occasionally bump into him at like the kitchen getting coffee or down in the cafe getting a bagel or something. So I imagine like I'm in an elevator riding up with Scott or Satya or Bill, or put your favorite here, put Bezos or Elon or whoever. And they lean over to me and they're like, so who are you? What do you do here? I'm like, well, my name's Bryan, and I work in the developer services division. And Satya said, oh, that's awesome. Like that's the most important division at all of Microsoft. Like you're great, like fantastic. So what is it like? What is it that you work on? What have you been doing for the last month or so? And at this point, if I lean over to Satya and I said, well, I built this feature foo and I deployed it to a bunch of people. Now this is the point where the elevator dings and he gets off. And he's like, well, I don't really understand that. I don't really understand the impact you're having. Like, I presume it's okay. Like, keep on doing that thing. But realistically, when he walks away and goes to get his coffee, he's already forgotten about me. Like, I haven't made it clear what impact I'm having on the business at a level that he can relate to. But let's play that back. Instead of saying exactly what feature I built and what technology I used and how many people I deployed it to, I talk about it in terms of the why. I talk about it in terms of the impact. Well, Satya, last month, I got 20% more people to convert trial subscriptions to paid subscriptions. Whoa, Bryan, that's awesome. Let me play that back again for my actual job. Satya, last month, I reduced security vulnerability remediation times by 25%. So our developers are fixing things much faster and our customers are much less at risk. And this is where Satya goes, Bryan, that is incredible. Like, I am going to contact your manager and make sure you get a double promotion this afternoon. Good job, buddy. Now that actually never happens, but you get the point. Like, we want to communicate the value of the why. That's our goal. That's what we want to set as our thing to achieve. Another thing here, I keep coming back to this bad one because it's so illustrative. When we set goals like this, you know what else is wrong with it? There's only one way to succeed. Like the only way I can achieve this goal is to go build feature foo and go deploy it to 5,000 customers. But what happens if a week into the month or a day into the month, whatever, I wake up and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't have to go build this expensive feature. I don't have to set a team of 10 devs to go, work over this for a month to do this. I can fix this customer problem if I just go do this other cheap thing. I can have it cranked out this afternoon. But I can't do that. Like I've handcuffed myself. I've said, here's what I'm going to do. Like people get blinders on of the feature that gets us there. You have to give yourself freedom to pivot to different things, to think of new ideas, to experiment. We're going to get into this in a lot more in a little bit. But you can't hire the best, brightest, most capable, most creative people around and then say, all right, there's one way to solve the problem, go do it. Like that's not a recipe for success. Here's a much better way. You have like a lot of different ways to pivot on this and create new solutions. We talked about this too. I've gotten way ahead of myself. Sorry, everybody. Yes, the business outcomes may be outside your control, but not outside your influence. I think I'm actually going backwards in my slides. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that you are seeing the slide for the first time. I think you can go ahead.
All right. All right, now I'm gonna figure out where I am in my slide deck. Sorry, everybody. Once we have a notion of a business outcome in mind, so now we have, at this point in time, we have an objective goal in mind, a good why. We ask ourselves, like, why aren't we achieving this objective already? Where can we get ideas from this? Like, go ahead, answer in the chat. Where can we find this out? Or where can we find this out? Where can we get ideas from? Why might we not be doing this already? Go ahead.
Okay, feel free to write in the chat where you can get these business ideas. Awesome. We have Maria who's saying user research. Customer surveys.
Yeah, customer surveys, absolutely.
Customers. Great, guys.
Customers themselves, certainly. All of these are right and good ideas. Here's just a few.
We have data.
So,
okay.
Yeah, data. Thank you. I was hoping someone was going to say that. Yeah, like so we have verbatims from customers. I know my customers are never shy about saying what is working both well and what not working well for them. I don't mean to imply they're always angry. They're often happy, but they always want to give feedback. Data, certainly, we should be using both quantitative as well as qualitative measures to determine potential pain points. Yeah, even our own intuition. We want to discard this, but we really shouldn't. Again, we are very intelligent, creative people, and we might have good insights about this. Now, this doesn't mean we're going to take direct action on it. Like, it's not our job just to say, I think it's this, so go do it. But you can always feel free to use your own intuition, your own experience, your own insights as the start of a process of validation. So now we have a goal in mind, and we have some places to start getting ideas for problems from. And now we formulate these into hypotheses. So our goal is we want to improve our trial conversion rates by 20%. What's the next cut down of pain points that might be preventing us today? And again, we used the data, we used feedback, we used our own intuition to get here. Well, maybe we just pester people too much. Maybe when someone goes to sign up or convert their trial to a full, we ask them, 50 questions and their social security number, and they give up. Like, you're too intrusive. I don't like. It's not worth it. I'm out of here. Maybe people don't convert trial subscriptions because we only give them like a short amount of time and they can't decide if they really want to pay for it or not. Maybe they don't convert trial subscriptions because we're just too expensive. I don't want to pay whatever when I can go get this other thing for cheaper. Again, these are all good potential hypotheses. these may all be right, these may none be right, we don't know, but we're just going to compile a reasonable list of these. We don't have to pick one at a time. What we're going to do next is we're going to go validate or invalidate these hypotheses. And we can do, again, we can do multiple at a time. We're going to go to customers at this point, and we're going to test our hypotheses with them. But here's what not to do. Like, don't lead the witness. When you have your interviews with your customers, don't be like, so did you not convert your trial subscription because we asked too many questions when you tried to sign up for a full? Like, that's totally leading the witness. Like, they on their own, they may never have come up with that, and they'll be like, yeah, I guess that's the reason why. It's not an honest, meaningful feedback. What you want to do is, hey, tell me about a recent experience you had with your trial subscription. Something like that, something very open-ended, and then just listen to what they have to say. And especially listen for emotion. If they're like, I had a trial subscription and I tried to sign up, and you know what, you guys asked me so many questions, like it was so intrusive. I hated it. I gave up. Like that kind of emotional level feedback lets you know you're onto something really, really strong. I would, when I'm taking notes and I hear that kind of, and again, it can be positive too. It can be like, yeah, I had a great experience with your trial subscription. Like, I loved it. I went to sign up for a real one and it was super smooth, and I'm a happy paying customer. Again, like all of this, that strong emotion is a great thing. What you're going to do is you have your list of your hypotheses on your pad, your notebook or whatever. As you're listening to people give their open-ended feedback, you are keeping your hypotheses that you're validating kind of in the back of your mind. And you're like, okay, if she says something about it being too expensive, I'm gonna mark like that hypothesis is validated for this person. Or if she says the trial period, like I just didn't have enough time, that's a validation of that. And at the same time, you can invalidate things. Like your trial subject, your interviewee might say, you know, like your product is really reasonably priced. Like, okay, so like the too expensive one is actually explicitly invalidated for this user. And then finally, you can just get no evidence. Again, you're leaving things open-ended, and you're correctly not leading the witness. But if they just don't bring up something, like if they just never talk about price or whether it's expensive or not, you just have no evidence for that hypothesis, for that test subject. And that's fine. So you go through many test subjects with many hypotheses that you're just listening for all at the same time. So you're literally testing all of them at the same time with every test subject. You put them all into a grid or whatever you like at the end. So here are my hypotheses, here are all the people. And now I look for trends. So for this test subject, this was validated, and this was no evidence. You can read it. So if this was, I'll put it back to all of you folks now. So if this was your test matrix, what is your takeaway of the biggest problem? It's not a trick. What's your takeaway?
Awesome. Feel free to write in the chats. What is your takeaway, which is the biggest problem? Okay, it's too expensive.
It's too expensive. Yeah, we have a lot of, like, it doesn't have to be unanimous down the board, but we have validated. That looks pretty good.
Yeah.
This one, that like too expensive looks really solid. Trial period too short. Well, no evidence. Validated, invalidated, validated. Like on the balance, it's more validated than not, but it's certainly not as strong as too expensive. And then too many questions, I have one yes and then a bunch of no evidence. So this just could be one person who had like an anomalous experience. So to me, if this was my matrix, I would look at it and be like, okay, clearly our big problem right now, we're too expensive. What if this is our result? This is a lot trickier. What do you think we should do here? Go ahead and write in the chat. No one's answering. It's very ambiguous, isn't it?
Yeah.
What we have is, well, this one is invalidated and then a bunch of no evidence. And this one's more invalidated than validated. And this one is only invalidated and no evidence. You know what? I think all three of these are wrong. At this point, if I got this matrix, I would start again. None of these are strong enough to support development against. And you know what? That is okay. This is a good outcome. Like, this is another one where I see people like think this is failure. Like, oh, all my ideas were bad ideas. I'm terrible. No, it's not. You had some hypotheses that you put, and they were invalidated. The only way you could turn this into failure is if you went and committed a bunch of dev resources to doing this, or if you didn't share these outcomes with other people in your organization. Like, I love the culture when we have customer feedback like this, when we have hypothesis validation of sharing the results broadly throughout your org. Because this may influence what other people are thinking too. There may be other people, especially in big orgs. Like, I've worked in startups and everybody knows what everybody's working on. But in large companies, it gets a little fuzzier. So you can share the kinds of things that you are testing and the output you had, and that may really help somebody else. And then they may do the same thing for you. Again, like, if I got this one, I would start again. And that's why these are cycles and not a straight line. So we have this identifying the best problem to solve. If we get to the end of it and we haven't identified a good problem to solve, start over. It's okay. It's not failure. It is success. The only way to make it failure is to move forward with something that's not a real problem.
Yeah, and we have a lot of people in chat who are also
go ahead.
giving us suggestions that we can also increase our sample size for our survey.
Yeah. Okay, you could just say, hey, we need a bigger sample size, sure. But don't push it. Like, don't be like, you've got to still look for, if not exactly statistically significant, which is fine. Like, don't like, well, I asked 50 people and 3 of them said yes, so that's the most we have. We'll go with it. Yeah, no.
That makes sense.
You especially don't want to do this one that I have up on the slide right now. This is a super recipe for failure. So some customer calls in and like, I want this feature. And so I'm just like, okay, boom, I'll add it to the backlog. Like this, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie Office Space. It's kind of a classic at this point. I think it was like 95 or something like that. But there's a scene in Office Space where this guy is basically getting asked, like, so he's a PM. So like, what do you do here? And he's like, well, I take the requirement from the customer and I give it to the engineer. They're like, okay, like don't be that guy. Like, your job is not to just take a requirement from a customer and then go put it in a backlog somewhere. Your job is much more important than that. You have to be able to understand the why and to synthesize something much better, potentially much better than just what the customer has explicitly asked for. All right, so now, at this point, we have a good objective business goal that talks about the why and not the what or the how. And we have a validated customer pain point that we have tested and had hypotheses, and we know exactly what part of the problem we need to hone in on. Now we need to deliver a solution to go solve that problem. And this is where we get to be creative. This is one of the best parts of the job. Again, this is not where we go to the customer and say, what would you like me to build for you? And take a spec from them and put it on the developer's plate. I weep when I see people like just take things and like, okay, we'll do that. Like, this is where you get to exercise all of your creativity and all of your creative thinking and use your customer empathy. Put yourself in your customer's shoes and you know what their pain point is. What would you expect would be the best outcome? What would really delight you? Again, you don't feel, I don't know, like, don't feel like you can't use your own insights here, you can, because again, you're just coming up with hypotheses. This is not the point at which we go do like monstrous amounts of engineering work. Just like we did in creating problem hypotheses to validate pain points, we're going to create solution hypotheses to figure out how to best solve the problem. So here, what do we have? Here's our goal, improve trial conversion rates. Here's our validated pain point. We asked too many questions. I think a good solution to that will be, let's change our sign-up process to be just a single click. That way, like, we're not going to ask too many questions. Seems very reasonable. But at this point, it's just a hypothesis. So let's review what we did so far. We formulated some problem hypotheses, and we validated one. And then we formulated a solution hypothesis, and now it's time to validate it. How do you think we're going to validate a solution hypothesis? You might think we'll just use the same process. Like, we'll go talk to customers and we'll say, hey, is this the right thing to build? But you can't. The way that I look at this is, if you go to a customer and you say, so if we go build this feature foo, are you going to use it? What they really hear is, do you want a cookie? And everybody wants a cookie. No one is going to say no to this. Like, or you might get a few, but it's not an honest answer. This is like my wife telling me, hey, Brian, if I buy you that Bowflex system, are you finally going to use it and you're going to get rid of your lockdown weight and you're going to get in shape? And I'll be like, yeah, totally. Like, if you give me that Bowflex, like, I will absolutely get in shape. So my loving wife goes and buys me the Bowflex, and then, you know, I use it for a week, and a week later it's clothes are hanging on it. You know how this goes. You can't just say, like, or you can ask customers if they're going to use it, and they can tell you no, and you know they won't. But if they tell you yes, like, you can't just take them at their word for it. The only way you know if they're really going to use it is to deploy it to them. Like, this is where the rubber meets the road. You really got to get some working code in their hands before you know whether what you did solves their problem or not. So yay, we shipped the feature. Does this mean we're done? No, we're not done yet. We're not done until we see the desired result. Look, we had an objective goal, and we had a verified pain point, and we said, we think our solution hypothesis is that our trial conversion rates are going to improve by 20%. So we are going to validate our success because we're watching our telemetry, and we're going to see that our rates improve by 20%. If our rates aren't improving, our rates are only improving by like 2%. We didn't get the solution we wanted to. We need to go back to that double cycle and try again. And here's another way you can't measure success. You really can't measure success with interviews. Hey, we've built this. Are you happy with it now? Like, it's not objective. It's way too subjective. Personally, I don't. There's sometimes this is unavoidable. I don't want you to over-index on this one. There's some areas where you really just have to straight pull customer satisfaction numbers and customer happiness numbers. I may just be a little bit too much of a scientist or data scientist to really love this approach, though. Like, think of how many factors this is dependent on. Like, if it's the winter blahs, or, you know, it's just in the middle of daylight savings time, or someone just had a fight with their significant other, or any of 1,000 other reasons they could just be in a bad mood, you're not going to get a straight answer to this. Or the other way around, like, they may be unrealistically happy. Maybe they just got a promotion or a bonus and the whole world is roses to them. Like, you're not getting a straight scientific answer to your question. So I much prefer the fact, or the scenarios when we can objectively measure, like, we're going to improve by 20%, and we succeeded when it goes up 20%, full stop. Like, it takes all the emotion and subjectivity out of it. So wrapping up, please remember that a feature is just a means to an end. I know as PMs, we all really want to build features, and it's great and it's necessary, but it is a means to an end. The end is solving the customer pain point. You have to be willing to let go of some particular feature that you have in mind to get to that goal. The goal is the goal, not the means. So start yourself with a why-focused business goal, and not a what-focused business goal or a how-focused business goal. Create some problem hypotheses and validate or invalidate them. Then build and deploy your MVP solution. I'm sorry, I skipped over this when I got a little bit lost in my slides. When we're talking about building solutions and validating solution hypotheses, you really want to go for that minimum viable product solution. Like, don't overinvest in a super polished solution hypothesis. There's a lot of people that I work with that are very customer obsessed, and this is a good thing. They take a lot of pride in their work, and this is a good thing. But they don't always like to ship MVPs that aren't very polished. So one of my challenges, and the challenges for my teams, are to say to developers, there is a time for highly polished, but if we just have a problem that we're looking to validate, that V1 may be a complete disaster. We don't know. Again, it's just a hypothesis. So don't over-index. Don't go send a team. You as PMs, don't go send a team of 8 to 10 people for a year to build a solution hypothesis validation, because it may turn out to not be it. You may not get your 20%. You may only get 2. It's much better to find that out with a couple weeks of work than with 10 person years worth of work. So keep your V1 solution hypotheses as small as possible. You just want to know if you're moving in the right direction. At that point, then once you know it's successful, then start polishing it and getting your edge cases and your corner cases good. Super important. Don't ask your customers if they like it. You have to measure it. Know that you've achieved your business goal. And if you haven't achieved your business goal, keep iterating on new solution hypotheses. All right, that's it. I'm happy to take questions, and let me know if I answered your stuff in line, or you still have burning questions for me.
Yeah, I think we do have 10 minutes, so feel free to raise your hand, everyone, and we can take your question one by one. And yeah, there were some amazing questions, Bryan, in the chat during your session, and we hope everyone can. Yeah, I think Shreya had a question. So hi, Shreya, you can unmute her. Unmute yourself, yeah.
Hi, you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I have issues with my camera, so I'm not just putting it up. But then my question, Bryan, to you is, so when you said that, like we were validating hypothesis, and like there were 3 solutions, or like 3 possible issues that we thought would be working, but then none of them got validated. So when you have such scenarios, or like such setbacks in a realistic environment.
Oh,
I think Shreya.
So the question I heard so far was,
yeah, I can repeat.
How does that? Hello.
How does it?
Yeah,
what?
Shreya, I think we are having some network issues from Shreya, but I can repeat your question to Bryan. Her question was, how do you manage such setbacks in realistic scenario? Because you have to iterate a lot, and if you have a fixed timeline, how do you manage this in a very fixed timeline set? How do you manage reiteration?
No, it's a great question. I would. It's tough to deal with the like fixed timeline. But if you don't really, if at that point in the process, you don't even really know what the problem is, like I would put, if I were in these shoes, I would push back, and I know that can be tough. I would push back and say, look, we don't even know what the real customer pain point is yet. And we can move forward with one of these things that we've guessed and haven't validated, but that could be an incredibly expensive mistake. Like, keep in mind that building a feature is not just expensive in terms of building it, but you have to maintain that like indefinitely until you explicitly deprecate it. And every bit of code that's in your product is another bit of complexity that your developers have to work around, and it's something that could potentially go wrong, and it's something you have to support. So if you've built a solution in search of a problem and the problem isn't there, bad things are going to happen. Like it's not just the productivity loss that you could have been actually solving the real thing. Like you've permanently, until you explicitly deprecate it, you've permanently taxed yourself, and your ability to deliver real solutions is diminished. This is a way of saying, I'm going to try to pull out like an old quote. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. And I think I'm gonna do the best I can with a quote. Someone's gonna know it better than me. But Abraham Lincoln said, if someone gave me 2 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first hour sharpening my axe. It's kind of that way. Like we could go attack that tree with a dull axe, or we could better validate the pain point and sharpen it.
Truly makes sense. Thanks, Bryan. I think that answers your question, Shreya. We can move to the next question. We can move to iPhone. I'm not sure. You can start your question. Awesome.
Hey, I think like, I don't know if I'm iPhone, but I'm just gonna steal the spotlight here for a minute. So, hi, Bryan. Thank you very much for sparing some of your time to enlighten us today. My name is Jenna, and I currently work as a consultant at Toyota, but I'm trying to convert from a business analyst to a product manager right now. Okay. So two parts to the question. One is, I currently have a product manager, but he's making the mistake that you were just talking about, which is putting things in my backlog. So how can I not hurt his feelings, but make him more aware about this? And as well as try to gain, some transferable skills in my current role, so that when I do interview for the role itself, I can talk more about it?
That is an excellent question. And this kind of gets into this is another very good PM skill. This kind of gets into like, how do we influence without giving authority? How can we bring someone over to our way of thinking? And like, wow, we could probably take entire sessions on this, and I'm not gonna do it justice. And I'm sure there's many strategies for this. Personally, my personal like different people like to use. Some people respond very well to like straight logic, and you could go to the person and be like, well, logically, like X, Y, and Z, and here are these other things that could go wrong. And that's a reasonable strategy. Like a lot of people at Microsoft respond really well to like the straight logical argument. This is just a personal thing. Like there's no right or wrong here. I try to set a little bit more of a visionary of, hey, here's how the future could be. Why don't you let's come together on this? And I might position that as, hey, like imagine where we really solved, like there may be this customer pain point that we just don't know about. Like, or you can use an anecdote here too, I suppose. Like I heard from so-and-so, and maybe that's not indicative of everybody, but what would be really interesting is if we found out, maybe volunteer to do a hypothesis validation yourself. Like that's actually, this is another great tactic for getting people to agree to work, is if you do the work. I'm like I'm not expecting anything from you. Like, I'll do this and I'll share the results with you, and then we can talk about what they do. This tends to work really well too. You're asking an excellent question that deserves way more time, no doubt about it. And that would also get you your goal of getting some experience too. So maybe there's a good win-win there.
Sure, Brian, thank you very much. To chat more, probably I'll connect with you on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah, please do.
So,
Always happy to. Please do.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to Brian on LinkedIn as well, everyone. And we have a last question with Gordon. We have already exceeded our time, but I would really appreciate if we can keep it very short and crisp. Yeah, Gordon.
Did I answer Gordon, or did I gloss over it?
No, I think this is good, and I think the previous question might have gotten at it as well. So I don't need to ask. I think the tension that I have is around how to push back on senior level stakeholders when they've made promises to someone, probably an investor or someone, and now, that deadline is there's more implications than just like the product vision. So, but I think you kind of answered it. I don't know how to navigate that yet.
This is another super tricky one. And I try to look at things with the best intentions, and I won't lie. Like I sometimes come into conflict with my own research versus what I'm hearing from executives as well. And at least in my role, I always feel free to say, all right, I hear you, and here's what I've measured, and here's what I've validated. But I also have to respect that people at the upper echelons have a broader view than I do. Like I have a certain amount of breadth, no doubt about it. And I'm like here in the org. And as they get up, they may see much broader. So I respect that too. There's no silver bullet here. You can push back, and sometimes you can convince people, and sometimes you can't. But it's not. I never try to say it's a personal thing. I may say, like, I get why you have a breadth that comes from your place in the org. So be it. But I've done the best I can and presented the most clear picture that I can up to them, which is my role.
That's good. You're the second PM who's kind of called it like empathy. It's like you empathize for that person, their interests, their seat. So you're still holding on to that key empathy of like a product manager, even in the response you just gave. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for the question. Thank you, Brian, for this. Everyone, if you like the session, feel free to get it out on LinkedIn, give a shout out to Brian or whatever you learned, tag Product Buds, and reach out to Brian on LinkedIn for more. And thank you. Everyone is also thanking you, Brian, on chat as well. If we can have a big round of applause for Brian, and that will be really helpful. So we learned about today about how to set hypotheses, and building the right solution means actually identifying the right problem and then not be afraid to reiterate. So thank you, Brian, for this, and we appreciate your time.
Feel free to reach out over LinkedIn. I would love to continue the discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.